I'm now live. Good morning. See, it's a little bit better. At least I have on lipstick. So if you missed the last one, anyway. Hi, good morning. So my husband, this drives him crazy because he said he only sees half my face over here and he wants it to be, but I said, too bad. I want it to be separated. So anyway, good morning. Who is it? Oh, hi, Judy. Oh, hey, Helen. One day y'all are going to both be here together. But you're together now, aren't you? Okay, so, yeah, so here we go. So last week, I do want to say this won't apply to you guys, but so last week was down, was taken off. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like it just disappeared. Like I didn't get a note saying, hey, you have violated community guidelines. I didn't get a note like that. But it was there for, I don't know how long. Oh, Helen just waved at her screen. Hey. I wish I could see you. So but it went down. So I don't know why, and I don't know how to put it back on there. So, yeah, you'll just have to go to the St. Paul YouTube page. Teresa, is it back already on there?
Yes,
it's already on there.
And the website.
And it's on the St. Paul website, so you can check there. If you and Facebook. Go to St. Paul. They'll hook you up. Okay. But I'm gonna have my own place to put these things, but it's just not finished yet. So anyway. That's taken care of. My coffee mug. So because of that, my coffee mug today says, I said what I said. And because I don't know if, I don't know. Anyway. Wow, that got too much sugar in that, but I didn't even put sugar. It doesn't matter. So anyway, here we are. Hi, good morning. Rebecca's here today. Hey, Rebecca. She's waving at you. My mother might come in. I tried to call her. She didn't answer. Hurts my feelings a little bit, but it's okay. Other things going on. So today we're going to talk about Jacob and our continuation of learning how to be a friend of God. And we're skipping Isaac because Isaac, there's just not much written about him. There's not much going on. I mean, we assume that he was a good man. He lived and did what he was supposed to do. He continued in the way of his father. He kind of stayed in that same area where he grew up with his parents. And yeah, so he gets married and he marries this woman named Rebecca. And he was 40, it says, when they got married. And this starts Jacob's story really starts in 25, because it says here that Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebecca became pregnant, and the babies jostled within her. Okay? Now this is important to know what this says right here. So the babies jostled within her, and she said, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, because she had no idea what was going on. She had no idea. Now they didn't have ultrasounds. They didn't have blood tests. I'm pregnant, and waited to see what would happen. So she had no idea that there were two. So she goes to the Lord. She went to inquire. So, and that's two important things about Isaac and Rebecca. They both went and inquired of the Lord. They both went to do that. And that is so important and does say a lot about who they were and the marriage that they had. Okay? So the Lord says to Rebecca, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So remember that. We're going to see that, we all know Jacob's story, how he steals the birthright, but it's important to know that the Lord had already told Rebecca and Isaac that this was going to happen. This wasn't out of left field. This wasn't anything that anybody was surprised about. They knew that Rebecca was going to have 2 babies, and that the younger one was going to be above the older one, right? So we go through this story, and you have to skip 26 is just Isaac. and how he gets to the land where he is, and all this, that, and the other. So, and then that's really it about Isaac. That's really all we hear about until chapter 27. We get to the point where, oh wait, I skipped a part. My bad. At the end of chapter 25, when they're older, this is where the boys, Jacob and Esau, the twins, this is where at the end of chapter 25, we see that Jacob has prepared a stew and he's cooking, and Esau comes in and he's like, oh my gosh, I am starving. I'm starving. Can I please have some of this stew? I am about to die. I am going to die if you don't share this stew with me. And Jacob's like, well, I'll be glad to share, but you're going to have to give me your birthright. You have to give it to me. And Esau doesn't go, have you lost your mind? No, I'm not giving that to you. Esau says, well, I don't care. If I die of starvation right now, what difference does it make if I have a birthright or not? Because I'll be dead and you'll get it anyway. So yeah, I'll trade you. I will trade you my birthright for a bowl of your stew there. And they shook on it and they made an oath. And so Jacob fed Esau. So there is how that went. Now, Esau made his own decision there. And in reading these things as I was as I was reading these things and looking at Esau and Jacob, they are night and day. So I think when you look at what kind of man Jacob was and why he was a friend of God, I think it's interesting to also look at Esau and why he wasn't. Because Esau was this ruddy outdoorsman. He loved to hunt and be outside, and he was, his daddy's favorite. Isaac loved him, mostly because they say, all the commentators I read, because it says, because he liked the way that the game tasted. That's what he liked to eat. So Isaac favored Esau. Now Rebekah loved Jacob. He stayed around at home. He kind of kept to himself. He was quieter. He was more reserved. He wasn't the outdoorsman that his brother was. And a lot of the commentators that I read compared this to being of the world and about God. That Esau was more out and about the world and that physical and current in the moment things. And we see that at the end of chapter 25 because he was willing to give his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. Does that seem ridiculous to anyone else? He was so wrapped up in that temporary, right this moment, I'm starving to death feeling that he gave up his birthright. He traded it to his brother. So that's the two differences of these two brothers, okay? So Jacob gets that, but that doesn't mean that so Esau still had his inheritance from his father that he would be given. So he gave away his birthright, but he was still going to probably get the inheritance being the firstborn. So then we go into chapter 27. Sorry, I had to backtrack. Bear with y'all for a minute. Chapter 27 is the story that we all know about Jacob and Isaac. Wait. Oh, check my mic. I can't hear you. Oh, no. Oh, I don't know. Why can't they hear me? Does anybody know?
Maybe turn.
Helen, don't yell at me.
Can other people hear you?
Oh, there's my Mama, you're driving down the road. Hey, Mom. Mama, can you hear me?
Yeah. Do I?
I just added. I just added. Everyone can see you too. How do I get that to go off? But can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try and get you off. Okay, well, just come on in. The door's unlocked. How do I? Okay, now the sound's on. Okay, Judy says the sound's back on. Y'all, it's always a thing. Judy, how do I get Mama off here?
I'm gonna turn the phone over.
So professional. Do what?
Getting swiped down.
Laura or Logan, is one of y'all watching? Turn this off. How do I do this? Okay, I got it. Remove Becky Hesbeck. I got it.
How many people does it take to run Instagram?
More than me. Oh, yeah. Helen said this was her favorite part. You can't make this up. I can't script this, okay? Now, Rebecca, where was I?
The birthright.
The birthright. Okay. All right. What I was saying was that. Now, chapter 27 of Genesis, back to our regularly scheduled program. Chapter 27 of Genesis is the story that we all know about Jacob and Esau, because it's the story where Rebecca hears Isaac call for Esau so that he can give him his birthright, because he feels like he's about to die. He's old. He can't see. He just lays around in the tent all day, I guess. And so he feels like his time is near, and he says, bring Esau to me so that I can give him my blessing. Well, Rebecca hears this, and she's like, oh, shoot. Jacob, go here. We're going to trick your dad. You're going to wear hairy clothes and his shirt and go out and kill a fatted calf or a sheep, whatever it is, and bring it in. We're going to make a stew so that you can take it into your dad, and he's going to give you his blessing, and you will get his inheritance. So this is the plan that Rebecca concocts, okay? And sure enough, it happens. This is what happens. Isaac is deceived. He clearly cannot see, and he smells Esau, and when he reaches out to touch, he can feel this hairy arm that was, I would like to think that I would be able to know the difference between my children. I would like to think that they wouldn't be able to pull one over on me like this, but I mean, who knows? I'm not old and haven't lost my hearing or my sight yet. So, and I fully expect to. So, anyway, this happens. Then at the end, Jacob gets a little, oh no, and Rebecca gets a little nervous. And she's like, you've got to go. You got to go on. But she tells Isaac, she says, I cannot deal with another Canaanite daughter-in-law. I can't do it. I don't want that. Jacob's got to marry one of us. We can't have him marry a Canaanite woman, because guess who was married to a Canaanite woman? Esau. 2 of them, in fact. He had 2 Canaanite wives. Jacob at this time was not married, and so they send Jacob off after he's now gotten the birthright, and he's now gotten the inheritance, and he's gone off. So that when Esau comes back, he's like, Dad, you gave my inheritance? And he was like, well, I thought it was you. And he was like, but it wasn't me. It was my brother. It was Jacob. How could you have done this to me? And he says, I thought it was you. And Esau's like, well, take it back. And Isaac says, I cannot take it back. I've already given it. I can't take it back. I've made this oath. I've given it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. You're out of luck, buddy. I'm sorry. So Jacob's gone, and Esau is mad, and Rebecca is a little bit afraid. And as Jacob is running, as he is leaving, he stops. This is in the very end of chapter 28. So Jacob left, and he reached a certain place, and he stopped for the night because the sun has set. And taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. And he had a dream. in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Now, this in and of itself is pretty amazing, because Jacob is getting like a picture into heaven, and he is seeing angels coming and going. He is getting to see this picture of angels coming to the earth and going back up. That's pretty amazing in and of itself. We get to see this picture of what is going on, the things that we cannot see. So Jacob gets this picture, and above it, he stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord your God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. And when Jacob awoke, he said, surely the Lord is in this place. And he built an altar there and named it Bethel. This exchange between Jacob and God is God bringing Jacob in to the covenant that he had already made with Abraham and with Isaac. We hear this same thing repeated here. So God had known. God was not surprised. Remember, God was not surprised that it was Jacob. He hadn't been planning this whole time for it to be Esau. God knew that it was going to be Jacob. Here is the promise that he continues. Okay? Now Jacob goes on and he ends up at his uncle's house. This is his mother's brother, Laban. And this is where he was sent so he could have one of their people, he could marry into that. And in the meantime, they've said, this is just an interesting little tidbit. In the meantime, they've said, Esau knows that Jacob has gone to go find a wife that's not a Canaanite, that's not one of them. And he kind of says, oh, my mother doesn't like my wives. So he marries a third woman, who is one of them, but guess who she is? Ishmael's daughter. Ishmael's daughter. Just interesting. We don't know we don't get any other little story about that, but I just think that's interesting. That Esau, the Edomites come from Esau. That's the land of Edom. And one of his wives is Ishmael's daughter. So yes, his cousin, but there weren't many to choose from, I guess. And so he's married to Ishmael's daughter, and these people, the Edomites and the Israelites, do not get along. They will not get along. They won't coexist peacefully, any of that. So that's just interesting. It's just a little extra tidbit, okay? So he goes and he sees, we all know this story too. We've heard this. So Jacob comes and he sees Rachel, Laban's youngest daughter, and he's like, oh, I love her. She is gorgeous. I want to marry her. That's who I'm going to marry. And he goes to Laban and he says, I am your nephew. Sorry, I thought I covered up my microphone. I am your nephew. My mother has sent me to you to find a wife. I have just met your daughter Rachel, and that's the one I want. That's who I want to marry. And Laban's like, well, what are we going to do? So it ends up being, he says, if you will give me Rachel, I will stay and work for you for 7 years. So Laban says, okay. So he prepares this feast, and the whole thing happens in the tent. They go in this dark tent at night, I assume, because lo and behold, it's not Rachel. It's Leah, her oldest sister. And Jacob doesn't realize that till it's too late. So he ends up married to Leah, and now he can't take it back. It's too late. So he goes to Laban and he says, why did you do that? And he said, well, we can't, up here in this part of the world, you can't, the oldest daughter has to get married before the youngest daughter, and That's what I had to make sure that happened. And he said, well, I love Rachel. I want to marry her. And he says, all right, fine, you can marry her too, but let's wait a week. And then you can marry Rachel. And then you have to stay 7 more years. And he says, all right, fine. So he ends up with these 2 wives. And everybody knows that Leah is not his favorite and that he does not love her as much. But the Lord blesses her with 4 sons. So she has the firstborn son. And Rachel is barren and does not have children yet. So Rachel says, here's my maid, have some, and with her in my place, she'll give me sons. He does, she has 2. Well, Leah says, well, here's my maidservant. She has two sons with her. So now we've got, if you're keeping count, that's 8 sons so far. 4 from Leah and 2 from each maidservant. Okay, that's 8. Then Rachel, the Lord opens up her womb. She has Joseph. We all know, we're going to talk about Joseph next week. Joseph is Rachel's firstborn son, his favorite wife's child. So then Leah has, so that's 9. Then Leah has another son, and then another son. So Leah has 6 sons. They've got the 4 from the maidservants. Are y'all confused? I'm getting a little confused. The 4 from the maidservants, and then Rachel's 1. So they're up to 11. 11 sons. And then Leah then has a daughter. Her name is Dinah. Only 1 daughter. I think I misspoke at some point and said that he had some daughters. He only had Dinah. Dinah was the only sister, the only daughter that he had. So it comes that it's time for, he's like, look, I've been with you. He ends up working for Laban for 20 years. And he says, okay, I need to go out on my own now. I need to do this. I need to go out on my own and start my own things. I'm going to take my family and go. And Laban is like, well, just the Lord has blessed me when you have been here. And I would like for you to stay. And he's like, I don't want to. I want to go. And so Jacob goes to his wives and says, look, and there's a story about speckled, spotted goats and sheep, and Jacob sets this up, said, I'm going to take the speckled and striped livestock, and then you keep the other ones, and then we'll know whose are mine and whose are yours, and you'll know if I've stolen any from you. And Laban agrees, but Jacob kind of gets afraid, and he's like, we're going. We're leaving. And he tells his wives and his children, we're going. And they do say, he's like, I want to go ahead and go. And Rachel says, well, of course, we're going with you. Let's go. We'll pack up. We're going to get moving. So, here's Becky Buck. She's here in the flesh now. Now that we've seen her ride here, now she's here. So Jacob and his entourage leave. And Laban goes after him, and that whole rigmarole. It all ends up fine. And Jacob is leaving with lots of flocks and herds, and he's done well. I mean, he's accumulated a lot. And he's got these 11 sons and 1 daughter and 2 wives and 2 maidservants of his wives. So he's got that. And as he's coming, he starts, one of his people says, oh, your brother knows you're coming. And he's sent out 400 to meet us. Well, Jacob's like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill us. My brother is still so mad at me. He sent 400 people after me. So he divides everything up. He sends his wives and all this going on. And he was like, here, meet him with this. And here is this you can give him as a gift. We're going to give him all the, and it's a lot. It's like 200 sheep, 200 of this, 200 of that, males and females and babies and all the things. He's giving him a sizable gift. And he sits him across the river, and he stays and waits. And this is what I think is really important, because this is what I think we need to learn from God. This is what I think we need to learn about this relationship that Jacob has with him. And he prays an amazing prayer in chapter 32 of Genesis. And he says, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. He prays this prayer that is very vulnerable, that is very open. And he prays back the words that God has already said to him. He reminds God, listen to what you told me. I'm believing in this, and I am counting on you to protect me and to keep my family safe. And he praises him. He says, listen, I don't deserve any of this that you gave me. I don't know how, I don't know why you have been so faithful and you have been so kind to me. I don't deserve it, but you gave it to me, and you have promised that you're going to do these things for me. You are the God of my fathers, and God does it. So I think we can look at this prayer and get a reminder. And it's also like Abraham, how Abraham was just honest. He was honest when he talked to the Lord. He was honest when he told him what he wanted and what he needed, and what he was like, God, I wish you wouldn't do that. Abraham was honest, and we see that Jacob is also having this honest, open conversation with the Lord. So after that, he sends the kids and his wives off, and Jacob, it says in verse 22 of chapter 32, that night Jacob got up and took his two wives and his two men. Okay, let me skip down. He says, when the man saw that he could not, so it's verse 24. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. And the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. And Jacob said, please tell me your name. And he replied, why do you ask me my name? Then he blessed them there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. He met God again and wrestled with him. He wrestled with him and said, you are not going to get away from me until I get a blessing. That's so important, that pursuit that he had. Jacob was determined to get that blessing. Determined. Not only that, but God touched his hip to try and weaken him. And Jacob still never let go. He never let go. When it got hard in this wrestling, this overnight, can you imagine wrestling with the Lord like this overnight, physically, and being injured and still not letting go? So not only did he overcome that, but he had a physical reminder for the rest of his life that he had wrestled with the Lord and that the Lord had blessed him. So when he was feeling down and out, he could go, oh, well, I didn't let go before. I'm not going to let go now. And I think that's so important. I think this is why to me, Jacob stands out, because he had this relentless pursuit. He was not giving up. He wasn't going to let it go. He was going to get it. And then he had that reminder. He had that opportunity. He had that relationship with God. He knew that what God had promised, he believed that God was going to keep his promise. Don't you know that he had heard the story from his dad of how, you remember, guys, that, when I was a little boy, my dad tried to sacrifice me to God. Have I done that to you? No. Don't you know that he had heard that story repeated? He knew that God was faithful to his father. And then he has had the same opportunity to have that relationship as well, and to believe God is who he says he is. So what we need to remember and learn from Jacob is to have that relentless pursuit for the blessing that God has for us. Jacob already knew he had been promised that. When he first set out on his own, God had already promised, I'm going to continue this for you that I had started with your fathers. He knew that that's what he had in store, yet he was relentless in keeping that pursuit. Next week we're going to talk about Joseph, because he's the next great one. Okay? His sound is up. Oh, Helen, I'm sorry. Oh, well. I don't know how to fix it. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with me while I had my mother on the screen and couldn't figure out how to get her off for the sound coming and going. Maybe in the playback it'll play for real. If not, go to the St. Paul website and they will direct you. I don't know. You'll find it. Thanks. Bye.